So in this article, it portrays perfectionism as a neglected personality trait, like from Freud, that it's like narcissistic and it's a neurotic disorder. And so while others in the article view it as a positive aspect of functioning, human function, and they define perfectionism as a way to for people to work their best for themselves than it is required from the other people. They also discuss the two forms of perfectionism, which is normal and neurotic. Normal being that they are satisfied from their own work and from their high quality of work that they do. And for neurotic, it's when they don't feel satisfied no matter how hard they work on something or how good the stuff they worked on is. And so, nor they theorize that positive perfectionism is like a behavioral and thinking process that's followed with the high goals and is linked with positive reinforcement, while negative is when the behavior and thinking process is followed by the high goals too, but it's to avoid and escape from whatever they have, like consequences or punishment they get at home or from themselves. And the methods they would use would be like there was two methods. One would be like the different type of questionnaires. What would be the MPS, which is the multi-dimensional perfectionism scale. That they use 116 normal controlled women and 22 neurotic and women with eating disorders. And the scale, we're testing the self-orientated perfectionism, which is how they set themselves in high standards for themselves. Socially prescribed perfectionism, which is where they think people put these expectations on them. And other oriented perfectionism is where they put perfectionism, like perfectionistic expectations on other people, and they put it on themselves as well. And the skills that they were used also were five, and it was mistake, and is where the factors where mistake was one being mistake, and is where a mistake is where they think that like if they mess up, people would think less of them. Another one was personal personal standards, was where like they always have to do better. They can't be at low, like they always have to do the best. And if they don't do their best, they're a failure. Three is parental expectations, is where the parents expect them to do stuff. And the parental criticism is where like they the parents punish them like evil verbally or like abusively. And then doubt, which is like they have doubts for things or for what they do, so they like compulsively try to do better and better and better and better. Um, and they try to put it like an end to a speculation of the positive and negative perfectionism with the socially self orientated and socially prescribed and other orientated perfectionism, as they used a new type of questionnaire called the positive and negative perfectionism scale. And they use like a 20 questionnaire, 20 questions on positive and negative perfectionism, and 20 questions on socially prescribed and self-orientated questions. And in this method, they use 225 controlled females, 21 being in clubs, no, 20 in clubs, like they're successful in clubs like UNICEF or something, 21 having an eating disorder, and another 15 of those women were depressed. And the results were that they found in the dual process model that the positive perfectionism is identified with like an approach behavior, which is where they would do stuff for themselves and to get better. And then the negative perfectionism obviously associated with avoidance behavior, which is where they don't they do stuff, but not for themselves. They do it not to get better, but to avoid fear of failure. And for positive positive performance type, um, if they do not win or they do not reach their full potential, they do not suffer from like different types of effects that a negative perfectionistic person would get in a long term. Um, and the studies also showed that the female athletes would focus on negative perfectionism before like a race or something, they would like they have the tendency to have more mistakes, have high anxiety level, low confidence in themselves, and negative thinking before the game or the race or whatever they have for the female athletes. They finally reached to the conclusion that like the development of perfectionism is done by three possible behavioral mechanisms. The first being social contingency. I don't really know what the word says, but I know what it means. Is where like a person do good for themselves, but then the teams or other peers rely on them to like keep doing better and have higher expectations on that person who are doing good so they can continue to do good, and that puts a lot of pressure on the person. Two is where they avoid, whereas the avoidance performance, perfectionism performance, which is like where they set really high standards for themselves so they can escape from that fear of failure or punishment from their own parents or anything to anything that isn't for themselves to get better, is more to get away from something. And the last one is where a person who has an authoritative figure, say like a mom who works in the CEO, and they think they have to branch out and be as good as that parent or that authoritative figure. So even though the mom or the authoritative figure does not really want them to pursue in that direction, like they're not forcing them, but that person think they should, and they should be as perfect as their parents.